All right. Hello, everyone. I am Nick, and welcome back to the CDP pair programming stream. I'm here with Rory and Zach, where we'll be working on a two-way. Rory has really taken the wheel on working on this project, and so he's going to go over what he's done so far, some of the discussions that we've had on design, and where we are right now.
Yeah, sounds good. So I guess what I can do if you want is I can just jump into it.
Yeah, just dive right in. We're ready.
Alrighty then. Let's see. Can you see my screen all right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Um, cool. So I guess I have a couple of commits that I don't know if you've seen yet, Nick. But I could show you that and get your input on it, or else could just explain what I'm doing right now.
Yeah. Why don't you talk about what you did recently with your commits?
Okay, let's see. I think I'll bring over this GitHub window here. Let's see if I can make the text bigger. Um, let's see. So, appearance. Okay, well, not a whole lot of options are. Is this readable or too
Not
small?
yeah. Probably on stream is probably a little bit difficult to see.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, when
Okay.
you kind of just, you can give a little on a high level what the commit is.
Okay. So let's see. What was the last thing that happened on the stream last week?
Last
We
time we were talking about how you had worked on the receipt and had gotten
mhm.
that working.
Yeah. So let's see. We had duck utils is equal. We did last time, and so I mean this is maybe an interesting one. I removed the copy constructor and assignment operator from duck because what I was finding is that duck radio gets used in a lot of places, and so basically any code could chain or it could just use the radio, and from that you could like kind of sneak packets out that duck.cpp wouldn't know about.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of became a problem because yeah, duck radio, um, or rather duck.send data kind of needs to record the MUIDs that are going out so that
Mm-hmm.
the Papa duck can ACK those and the duck can say, oh yeah, I recognize that MUID.
Yeah, and then
Um,
also that will be important for the bloom filter too, because you're gonna need to record that in the bloom filter because we don't want to send a message that we sent.
mhm. Yeah. Yeah, just having everything go through duck is kind of the way that I think it needs to go. And there's a couple of different ways that we can like do that. But basically, what I decided was to take a couple of sort of like C++ precautions against making duck be copyable, because that's another problem that could have happened is that like if you had one duck and then you kind of copy constructed that duck to create another duck, you'd have two competing ducks that would each be recording different MUIDs and each be using the radio. And so that could cause problems. Or same with an assignment operator. So these are just some C++ ways to make sure that you can't copy a single duck. Um, and so also what I've thought about doing and what I did is to change basically, yeah, duck radio and ducknet to just being private member variables, or I guess they're protected here. Um, I don't remember why that's protected instead of private, but they're basically hidden from public use. So you've got duck radio here. This should be the only place that duck radio is called from, and same with ducknet. So like in other words, we've got duck owning Duck Radio and DuckNet, and that DuckNet and Duck Radio shouldn't be used anywhere else. So basically, previously what had been happening is that DuckNet had been using Duck Radio, and I can show you that code if that's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Just keep explaining.
Keep explaining? Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, basically how about this? DuckNet used to actually be a singleton. So it had this get instance method. So let me see if I can actually find the commit in a way that we can view that. Yeah, so I'm going to increase the text here. Is that readable?
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Okay. So I'm just going to search in here for duckradio.h. Okay. What did I do? Oh, this was a more limited change. This is not quite the one that I'm looking for here. So update ducks to be the only object to use duck radio. This is the one that's pretty interesting. So I'm going to git show that commit. And so yeah, you can read the commit message here at the top. I removed the singleton property, the singleton pattern from Duck Radio and DuckNet. And so I'm going to type in slash here at the bottom to search. I'm going to do duckradio.h. Here, oh, that's an includes. Great. Okay, so now what we've got here is, it's something that I'm not really sure what the coding style that you guys prefer is, but what I've done is I have at the bottom here you can see there's a static Duck Radio instance. I've gotten rid of that, and I've gotten rid of the well, I guess I didn't need to get rid of it there, but basically the Duck Radio constructor is still private, and instead of making this sort of get Duck Radio function, which I think I got rid of in a previous commit, basically instead of having a singleton way to do it, actually there it is. What am I doing? No, wait, sorry. That's a different thing. That's duck display.
Yeah.
That's still a singleton. Okay, bear with me here. But yeah, so I've added friend classes in the form of ducks. So, like friends can be a little bit weird in C++. Like those friend classes could basically manipulate the private member variables of this class, of this instance. But I didn't feel like that was a problem in this case, because the only private member variable is display here, which is a singleton itself. So like these classes would already have access to that member variable. And in here, an error rather is not actually necessary to be a private member variable. So like whatever, like ignore that for now. But yeah, so basically it's a little bit awkward just using friends because of that ability for them to modify private member variables. But in this case, I wanted to just set up a little bit of precautions in the architecture to make sure that Duck Radio isn't getting manipulated from arbitrary places in code. Mm-hmm. So just at that high level.
Yeah, so maybe explain like what the problem is with it being a singleton and how it was before, and maybe kind of just a little talk more about that, and then how this fixes it.
Sure. Yeah, so I'm going to hit, I think, G to get to the top here, and then I'm going to search downward again for duck. Oh, no, sorry. Actually, we're right there. DuckNet.cpp is all I need to show you. So now I just need to, exit out of that little search thing. So, right. let's scroll down until we find the sort of problem spot. Um, yeah, so here it is. We've got we're in DuckNet, remember,
Mm-hmm.
and we're using duck.radio. That's the old way that it was done. So basically, what could happen here is that duck radio could send out some data to the Papa. The Papa would see that packet and it would respond back saying, "Yeah, I am acknowledging your MUID that you just sent." But since it wasn't done like this, the mama duck, um, the mama duck, the mama duck would come into here and handle received packet, and it would say, yeah, I don't recognize that MUID. It would say, yes, the DUID of that acknowledgement is meant for me, but it would say, um, which one would it go in here? It would say the MUID that was being acted by the Papa was not the last MUID that I sent out, or rather, here's the particular if condition that it would fail. Um, so so yeah, what I basically needed to do was to route every use of the duck radio of the antenna through the duck. That has a couple of other benefits, I think, in the long term, just um, because you can prevent multiple parts of code kind of interfering with the duck radio. Like, say, if one part of code was trying to send a packet and the other part of code just just wanted to use the duck radio to receive a packet, like those things could conflict with each other. And I'm not exactly clear what that would cause to happen in that, in the duck radio. Like, I don't think duck radio has any kind of um, multi-threading safety, or I don't know if that's really needed or anything, but conceptually it makes sense to have only one thing kind of control the duck radio.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah,
So,
that sounds good. Although I think one thing is that we'll probably wanted to change out is instead of the last message, because we're probably going to send multiple messages before we get an acknowledgement. And so what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to store a certain amount of messages that are waiting to be acked,
mhm.
right? And so, and then after a certain amount of time, you're going to want to, if they aren't acked, then send them again.
Yeah,
But
perfect.
it only in one other here's one other issue though. Um, One thing to think about is when if you send another message that hasn't been acked, you cannot send the exact same message again because if the other devices, since now the recognition of did I send this message is going to be saved on a Bloom filter. If you send the same message ID, you can try to send the message out, and if it was relayed by the ducks nearby but just never made it to the pop-up or the act never made it back, then it's no one's going to relay it with the same message ID.
Mm.
So it's just one thing just to kind of keep in mind is because we're not going like for. So I'm just thinking more of the edge devices that are furthest away from the Papa Duck. It might take some time for it to get an ACK, and so the last message, they're probably going to send multiple messages um, before receiving the ACK for the first one. I mean, you could also put it into the code where as a setting saying only send new messages if you get an ACK. for the last message sent. But I think for the most case, we probably wouldn't want that. So just also something to think about when you're designing that, how you have this here works really well for testing, but also we should think about how implementing a kind of like holding pattern for the messages.
Right, yeah. So I had gotten as far as thinking about how to resend messages, or send multiple messages rather. And so that would be something like we have like a list of messages that need to be resent. But yeah, I hadn't thought about the protocol yet and then why that wouldn't work because yeah, you're right. Like we need some kind of way to specify that ducks should resend the message even though they've already seen a version of it.
Yeah, so either that is like, we could add a new topic, per se, for it, but I think it would be better if we just replace it with it gets a new message ID.
Okay, currently that's problematic because that's pretty much what everything is based off of is the MUID.
Well, it's yeah. So going forward, and so in this diagram that you're showing on your screen right now, it has the path still in it. So if you just wanted just to resend the message exactly as it was, if you were to send the exactly as it was, if using the path, it wouldn't be a problem because the signatures are on the message itself, not on the devices. But now that we're saving what messages have been seen on the devices, we're able to save much longer. So that's something that but also which even if we do change the message ID, again, it does, I mean, me, it's not such a big deal, but it will create a duplicate on the cloud side, right? Where it'll have a unique message ID with the exact same data. So it could make it, especially for like disaster relief scenario, this could be a little bit of a situation where you're sending duplicate data when that wasn't set. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So
because it could be I'm just thinking about the situation of where you could have a situation where could be very real where the acknowledgement, the Papa Duck received the message, but the acknowledgement was just never received by the duck itself. But it might, for right now, might not be the biggest issue. That's something we probably fix later. But the things of just kind of keep thinking about how it's going to work beyond the sender. Yeah, so how is it going to fit in the protocol when you're resending messages?
Right. So yeah, I think we need a way to identify messages because we need to know. Oh, let me back up. Actually, this is a really great catch. Like this is awesome that you've caught this now. So thank you for that.
And it's pair programming. This is
yeah.
Write some code and then you immediately do a little bit of code review. So it's a good to kind of flesh this, especially since this is kind of very complex problem. It's good to just continuously talk about it. Will help with our design.
Yeah, awesome. So I think I have a knee-jerk reaction here, which is to just add a byte that indicates the retry, and that's unique for each retry originating from the SDID duck. So in that case, it would be like your MUID would stay the same when you do a retry, but each duck that receives that packet will check. Okay, it'll factor that retry number into its Bloom filter, and that will affect the hash. So if one bit is different in there, then it'll consider that to be a different packet for the purposes of the bloom filter.
Yeah, so I'm actually looking at one of the jam boards that we did for um and remember that jam board that we did with Amir where have I seen this message, so it checks the
Mhm.
the it checks to see the message. So okay, so the first thing it does is checks the message ID. Is the first thing it always does. So I was wondering, oh, maybe do we check other stuff, the topic before, but we don't. So
Mhm.
because I was thinking like, oh well, we could just maybe it might be easier just to add a new topic rather than reserving because you know we could potentially reserve for the inside the header, right? Another byte. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just it's just it's not that like that's a bad. It's just that I'm a little hesitant to add to the header, because especially for the most part we will not be using that retry component. So I'm wondering if there's another way we could do it because every single time we edit the header, that makes a compatibility issue, right? Um, and also we don't want to make the header too bloated where because that eats into how much data we can send per packet. I mean, it's just 1 byte, so it's not really that big of a deal. But I'm just wondering what other ways we could resolve it other than adding to the header because that is a pretty big design choice to add it to the header.
Yeah, definitely worth considering other options. This is just
Mm-hmm.
my initial response, but
Yeah, so something we can think
currently,
of. We can think about. It's we don't need to put it in right now, but something we'll have to consider down the line.
yeah, it'll have to happen when something will have to happen when bloom filters are added in there.
Yeah,
Um,
hopefully we get that in next week. So
yeah.
now get that in merged into master, so we can start playing with that. So that's a can definitely change things up.
Mhm. Yeah. Um, so yeah, maybe worth doing a brainstorm later if we can figure out something better. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but for right now,
Yeah.
yeah,
So right now, yeah. So oh, where were we? Where we got on
right.
that tangent?
Yeah. Well, it was an important tangent, but yeah. So I was just going through, I guess, the Git commits that I've pushed
Mm-hmm.
recently.
Yeah, so you changed it so that in order to access Duck Radio, you have to access Duck. That's the only way.
That's right. Yeah. And so like duck.cpp is the only thing really, and the child classes as well, is the only thing that can access this duck radio instance, and that duck radio instance is the only thing that can, use the antenna.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So of
So,
course this code all has to change, but it's just kind of some placeholder
mm-hmm.
stuff to
Oh yeah, we were
try to
talking
keep
about the
track
less
of. So.
message. Yeah, so we're gonna change. They're gonna have to think about replacing that with instead of last message, checking the or adding to a like not a queue, but maybe like a hash or something like this that you can easily look up.
Yeah, so this gets into a conversation of how to make sure that each act, when let me back up for a second, and do I have an easy way? Yeah, I'm gonna actually just pull up a Jamboard real quick if that's all right.
Mm-hmm.
I want to kind of display um, I want to display kind of how packets will be moving
Mm-hmm.
and how acts will be moving. I seem to be having some lag here. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
put
maybe I'll
yeah.
do.
So start the Jamboard, and then add me, and I can pull it up on my.
Okay.
Might be a little bit easier for people to see.
Should I type in your email address here?
Yeah, this is
Okay.
the
I
Nick at
see I see it
Hardell.
now.
Okay, cool.
I see it on the live stream already.
Oh boy. Okay, yeah. This email address is popping up all over there. Okay. So, oops, yeah, I'm totally doing it wrong. Hold on. Okay, so you should have access now. And basically, yeah, so what is it going to be? It's going to be, we're going to have the client over here. Oh, okay, so client, and, well, just taking notes. How about this? Great. And we're going to have, right now it's the mama duck. Later this might be something like a duck link. And of course, so client sends something here. Maybe the MUID is AAAA. Wait. That's the neatest diagram ever. And then so Papa is going to be over here. Mama sends that on. That is the AAA again. And so Papa will say, okay, I've got my yeah, thank you. It's actually, let me just try and make it look a little bit neater here. Right, so I'm gonna draw lines to indicate when things happen. So yeah, client will send AAAA, Mama Duck will send it on to Papa. And so at this point, Papa will send back the ACK for AAAA, but if Mama Duck has multiple clients, what does Mama Duck do? Like, how does Mama Duck figure out which client to send those?
So what you're talking about is if multiple people are connected to the same Mama Duck and have they have their captive portal, and each of them have sent a message. So let's say you have 3 people, and so that means you have 3 different message IDs that were created, right?
Yeah.
And so now, how do you route that back to give the people acknowledgement that that's there?
Yeah. So currently,
And that's also given that they still have the capture portal open.
yeah. So there's some things that we kind of gotta figure out there, but let me maybe just document like the kind of simple case here.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, so this ACK, it's there. Like, this is all pretty simple so far, but yeah, then the question is like, how does the client request or otherwise understand that the ACK for the AAAA has received Mama Duck? So what's happening right now, what I've implemented, and I'll show you this to you in code in a second here, like is client duck, and it's not fully implemented, but this is the scheme. So client will say something like this. So it'll say, do you have AAAA? And basically, it's maybe a little bit unclear, but I'm trying to point out that Mama Duck hasn't actually seen that ACK yet. And it will basically say, no, I don't have AAA. So at this point, though, once the mom has received it, and client is going to be kind of continually polling for this, Mama Duck will have received it, and so it'll be a yes answer. So again, A and yes. That's kind of the initial kind of proof of concept that I'm going for, but I think we can do a little bit better where we have multiple clients kind of doing this. So
yeah, and also this so also the reason why we kind of have to do it this way is because the captive portal, or we're not able to send push notifications when a message is received, so it's more on the we had to put code on the client side to ask for the information, since it's difficult for us to send that data to the portal and get it on the screen. Right?
Right. Yeah, so that's the reason for the polling. Now the question is, like, when you have two clients, they can each be talking to Mama and each querying for the MUID, and so that's not really a problem. Mama can just like say, yes, I've got your particular MUID that you're asking for. But what happens is that we have a question here where if the response coming from the emergency operator upstream, let's just do this here. So if the cloud sends back some response that is some response that doesn't really identify the client, then that's a problem, because like say the client, or sorry, let's say the cloud responds back saying, or the DMS rather, that's probably a better way to do it, huh? You guys, what is this, the DMS?
Yeah, DMS.
So yeah, the DMS responds back saying, okay, we got your message that you need water. Please pack up your things and move a block south or a mile south. There's water there. That response is only intended for client A or client B, one particular client. And if that goes to the wrong client, or goes, doesn't get to the right client, then that's a huge problem. So what the DMS needs to do is somehow specify that it's either a response to the particular MUID that was sent by, say, client A, or it needs to specify some ID for client A. It can't just specify the Mama, in other words.
Yeah, so because anyways, also for the Mama to recognize which act is it for, it needs to be tied to a message ID at least, right?
Yeah, the acts are pretty easy from the standpoint, because the client can just query its own MUID from Mama. But thinking about responses, which is really kind of the more important part of what we're trying to implement, we will need some way to identify the client. I think that's more reasonable than trying to respond to the MUID.
Yeah, the only problem is, I think because part of the limitations of using the capture portal is that if they're not connected, we can't send anything, and if they disconnect, it starts a new session. And so, and if you're thinking probably in this kind of situation, people are very likely to turn off their phones, or they send a message, turn off their phone to save energy, and then want to check back later. So that's why I think I was talking about before is that we continue to work on like a message board type where people can see the responses. And it might be easier to do rather than because you're also saving less data too, right? Because if let's say the client is not connected, is let's say person A isn't connected anymore, the mama has to save that client data or has to send it over DMS, right? Or what the session ID or however we identify which client it is. That's either sent over as a packet, which is loses space, or it's saved on the mama, and for how long is that saved? Would it be better if we just had a message board where anyone who says anyone who sent a message can look and see hey, this is someone, also let's say someone hey, someone responded to your message, or be also be able to see hey, people are responding to us. So I'm wondering if that's maybe the way to go to show all of them because it would save space. I mean, and also on top of it though, I mean, I say saving space, but I mean, is that space saving that we really need? So those are kind of my questions that I'm thinking about.
Yeah. So here's what I really want to happen. I don't know if this is entirely possible. I think you had mentioned something about it previously, but what I want to use is wait for it, web storage. I want to use window.local storage basically, or a cookie on the browser to store some dynamically generated client ID.
So we could probably just build it and try and see how it works. I mean, I think that that might be fine.
Yeah. So yeah, that is what I was reading about as you called me. Or joined on the Google Meet here. So yeah,
Are we able to do that with the Captive Portal? I mean, I know the Captive Portal is basically a browser, but it's also kind of a little bit different because it has has limitations for security reasons.
Right. Yeah. So that is the thing that I don't understand. I was just trying to get into that, but what I was thinking about as the worst case scenario is that you could have the Wi-Fi be broadcast or just be open. So anybody can join it, no password. And then you just serve pages, and that wouldn't be exactly the same thing as a captive portal, would it? It would just be like you're just on this Wi-Fi, and then you're just serving pages from the gateway, basically, 192.168.1.1. So yeah, there's some usability questions that I would have. I don't really know. Yeah, I'm just not so familiar with captive portals and that sort of thing. But yeah, I would imagine that there's a worst case scenario where we can just serve regular web pages from the gateway, which is the DOM.
Yeah, and you can do that. It's just kind of the annoying part is that you have to type in the IP address of the duck, which is the same for every single duck, but for someone in an emergency situation, or I mean even in in a regular day-to-day situation when I'm using it, because we also have have you ever tried looking at the control panel So what you can do is right now is you can go to 192.168.1.1 slash control panel. For the Papa Duck, you also have the when it's instead of Duck Link, it says Papa Duck Setup. You can go. It doesn't a capture portal doesn't pop up when you connect to it, but you can change the Wi-Fi credentials by going to the same IP address but slash Wi-Fi in your browser. But the great part of using the captive portal is that when you connect to it, the page automatically opens up because people don't know how to because you can connect to a duck and you can just go to that IP address and it will take you to to what we display in the captive portal. But yeah, so you can serve regular pages, but we tried at one point where that when the captive portal would open, that you could open a web page like in like an actual browser outside the captive portal, and one of the reasons why we wanted to do that was because so we could get your phone's GPS. But yeah, so I mean, we were trying on the iPhone, and the security wasn't letting us have it. So we kind of threw that out. But I don't know, maybe there are other ways to do it. I mean, that was like 2 years ago that we tried that. So that was a long time. So maybe there are some other ways that we can get around that. But for obvious reasons why there are security reasons. So because if you let's say you set your phone to automatically connect to any available router, and then it opens up the captive portal, and then it opens something up in the browser, which then starts downloading malware to your phone or whatever. It can be pretty dangerous. So that's why there's a lot of security, because it does automatically open that web page, the captive portal. There are extra security measures on it.
Yeah.
So it can't through the captive portal you can't get you can't access the GPS, because that would be pretty bad if if the Wi-Fi routers that you're walking down the street would be able to get your GPS or what other data. I mean, if you're arranged the Wi-Fi router, they have a general idea of where you are anyways. But yeah, so that's kind of just some of the things that without your permission, we don't. I think that a lot of that is limited for those reasons, for those security reasons.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But we should definitely continue to explore that, because it's just to make it easier for people to get on it.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, I had two ways, and I'm just not a front-end engineer, but I had two ways of trying to store some generated client ID, which one would be cookies and the other would be like window.local storage, or window.session storage. And yeah, so I guess I was just going to try those things out, and I don't know, see how it goes. It's something that I need to read up on because it's not something that I've done before. But yeah. So we've got a couple of things to try. So we're not stuck. That's the good thing.
Yeah, there are options. But yeah, so that'd be pretty cool if we can do that. So, but we want to also think about those other cases of like kind of a backup. So I think that the message board, I think, is just the brute force. It's like that's the brute force solution that will work. People can look, but is that the best solution? Maybe not.
Right. I guess, yeah. I mean, it's all about providing what the user needs in that situation. And so, I don't know. This is a thing where I guess I would, hope to have some kind of user studies that some kind of user, well, what am I trying to say? I would hope that this has been kind of studied a little bit and that there's some kind of sort of paper that we could read about to see kind of what's best. I mean, just kind of trying to implement things for now seems like good for a proof of concept. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know, Zachary, to put you on the spot, can we ask you like what sounds good? Like, does all this sound like it would just be like, having anything would be better than nothing, or is there something that's like strongly preferred here, like having a message board? Could that even be good? Because then you'd see one message that an emergency operator could kind of like broadcast to a cluster of clients saying like, hey, you all need to move a mile south or whatever. Um, like, or is there private data that some particular client needs to communicate privately to the emergency operators, and therefore the response needs to be private as well? Um, like it'd be really interesting to hear kind of just from a user perspective what they need.
Yeah, I think it definitely would. There definitely would be some problems there. Um, I think it would. You might have to lock it down. This would probably be some kind of generic thing, because if they start, like you said, if they start sharing some personal information about their specific needs, you can start running into some uh, bad territories of privacy, and if it's anything kind of health related, HIPAA regulations, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think, yeah, they're it might be better off having like um, some kind of templated messages, and like, or some kind of notifications, I guess, to the user that like, hey, please do know that any information being shared over this is public view, is one thing you can kind of do, and then
I'm
leave it
wondering
as
if
just like a basic template kind of.
yeah. So like I wonder like what it's gonna look like for like saving the session ID, because also like another thing maybe we could do is like have almost a pin. You
Yeah.
can you
Oh
almost
yeah.
can have a pin that
Ye-
you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. The user can provide their own PIN. That's a good idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's maybe if like if we're like, let's say that every single time someone connects, we're not able to get the same data. That could be some way where when they connect, that you type in a pin. I don't know. I mean, or you could just. I mean, or like the same could be said that though you could just use the message ID, right? Because it's only 4 characters. So I don't know.
Yeah.
That's something you can provide to say, hey, is there a update on this message? And honestly, probably the easiest would be just like putting the pin is the message ID that you sent, and then you get access to it.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, that's less secure, but it's kind of a compromise between some kind of generated PIN or like 4 character ID that the user could use in the same way as a PIN, where they can copy and paste it into a new phone if their old phone dies or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they could do it on a different phone. That's true.
Um, so yeah, definitely got a lot of options.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, at least we know that like we should definitely warn users, uh, if everything's going to be public, and uh, I think these 2 options seem like the most promising to me so far. Um, and I suppose like the generated user ID seems best if we can do it, if we can use some kind of local storage on the device. Um, Otherwise, yeah, user pin sounds pretty great too. If we do need like the non-broadcast way of doing this.
So also actually, here's actually something I forgot about this issue. One of the problems me potentially with the message board is but I mean this won't be so much of an issue, but um, I know that there are some cases where if like aid is going to a certain area, that sometimes people, if they get catch wind of it, that it gets flooded, and the people who actually needed that aid are not able to get it just because everyone's trying to monopolize the aid, and so that's also maybe one of the reasons why using a message board might not be great. If everyone has access to the information, you might cause, you know, problems getting aid to where it needs to be, or evenly distributing the aid.
Yeah, that's actually a good thing. I was just thinking about that. Like, if you send out any kind of information about where you're gonna do like an A drop, it can easily, be monopolized. So maybe it's like best to kind of not keep it out to the public view, like message board.
Mm-hmm. Yes, maybe some kind of like this kind of pin thing.
Yeah, yeah. So for myself right now, what I'm thinking is that what I want to do, what I just want to try to implement is this generated version of a pin, and then we can default back down to the user provided pin because, like a lot of people are going to pick 1, 2, 3, 4. So yeah, that can be problematic if there's a lot of like user collisions and that sort of thing. So for that reason,
and also it also depends on how many people per device, right?
How many clients per
mama. Like if, let's say, hey, like 10, 15 years down the line, every person has their own duck, so to say, then that's not really an issue, right? But I don't know. But
That's
sure.
something that we brought, me and Rory brought up in last 2 week conversation I had. Is there any kind of data or thing out there that says how many devices can connect to a network before connect to like a single device before you overload it?
Yeah, I think the ESP32 is able to have, I think it was like 12 simultaneous connections to the Wi-Fi.
Mm-hmm.
But we haven't really done a stress test like that. So, yeah, so this is pretty good.
Just gonna write down some notes here. Yeah, also MAC address. Yeah, can't take a new phone. No one's gonna memorize their MAC address and even use that as like a key or anything in the same form as like a pin. Are there other? Yeah, whatever. Yeah. So basically, I'm gonna try and implement this generated user ID, some 4-character thing that's pretty easy, and then what will need to happen? Will that need to go into the protocol?
Protocol, no.
Or into the data section, I guess. Yeah.
So I would say that would be saved on the device itself, and it'd be tied to whatever message IDs.
Right. So the DMS is going to respond to an MUID. That MUID is going to kind of like look up into the client ID, and then the mama's going to give the client back its messages for that client, for that client ID. Yeah. So the DMS actually never knows the client ID.
Yeah. This also this kind of goes into question with two-way, is if you like, is the Papa duck when it sends so the acknowledgement makes sense to send Um, uh, so, so part of the payload is going to have to be the message ID that's tied to, because I'm thinking about also how does the response work.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it just seems most reasonable for the DMS to respond to a client ID, although that's kind of just like a gut feeling more than a.
So there's potentially going to be two. So for every message that is sent from a mama duck, there's potentially going to be two responses, right?
The ACK and the
The response from the first responders, which could take, depending on how busy they are, it could be immediate or taking a half an hour or an hour in between.
yeah. Right. So, yeah, basically, that makes sense then to have the client ID be passed in some way to the DMS. Because, yeah, I don't know if that mama is going to reboot in that time. Like, if the client knows its ID and the DMS knows the ID, the DMS can always talk to that client, even with power loss, temporary power loss at the mama or anything like that.
Oh yeah, that is a little bit of a problem. If it reboots, it will lose everything in the RAM.
Yeah, with a volatile, let's say it like this: even if the mama is volatile, the DMS can still talk to the client. So, yeah.
So that would make sense. So that's good.
Volatile. Sorry about the overwriting there. Yeah.
All right, so this feels pretty good. I think we figured out a couple things, laid out some notes of how we want to kind of attack this. Kind of went off on a tangent from where we started, but I think this was a good discussion to figure out some of these things and try to identify a couple potential pitfalls that might crop up along the way.
Yeah, I'm glad we had this conversation.
Yeah, we're coming up on an hour, so I think this might be a good spot to stop the stream for today. But if you're interested on helping out with this or want to figure out how you can contribute, check out our Slack, reach out to me or Rory. We have a Trello board for where we're tracking all the work that is being done on this two-way. It's a process. We can use as much help as we can get, and if you need access to that, let us know. We're happy to bring more people in to work on two-way communication, the next evolution of our ducks. So thank you, Rory, for the work you've done. This is a great session, and we'll continue on the discussion on Slack. And have a great rest of your week, guys. Happy holiday, and that's it.
Yep. Thanks, guys.